Hello and welcome back to the Lit Cave. This is Brian, and I thought I'd try a different background today. We decorated for Christmas the day after Thanksgiving, and so thought I'd have a little Christmassy decorations in the background. It looks kind of strange. The twinkle lights, well, they're not twinkling. The regular lights, the fairy lights, they look strange. They look strange. Okay, so this video is my November wrap-up video. So we're spending some time talking about what I read in November. And I had a pretty good month. I read 14 things. 13 of those were, well, 12 of those were books, 2 of those were graphic novels, and 1 was a short story, but it was about a 100-page short story. I actually read an additional short story that was 16 pages, but I didn't count that because it just wasn't enough for me to consider counting it for this. But I will talk about it briefly. So let's jump right in. Let's talk about what I read. The very first thing that I read, I had gotten most of the way through in October, and that is Diviners by Libba Bray. The Diviners by Libba Bray. And holy cow, this book was good. It was super intense. This is about the darkest book I probably would ever read. There were parts of this that were super creepy. Essentially, the idea is that we have some people that have basically different kinds of abilities, and that those people can interact with the spirit world in a different way. And so our main protagonist is kind of involved in interacting. She can divine by holding items and learn about characters. So she is helping to discover some information about a ghost that was involved in some pretty gruesome things. So super intense, super creepy in different parts. Definitely the creepiest thing I would probably want to read. Loved this book though. I gave it 4 stars and I recommend it. I finished that on November 6th, but I had been reading it at the end of October. It probably took me about 2 weeks to read, which is pretty long for something for me, but it was a couple of weeks where I was just super busy. As a teacher, it was the end of a 6 weeks, and hard for me to finish that up until the second 6 weeks, or the third 6 weeks kind of got started. So after that, and I don't have anything to hold up here, but I finished reading a series of comic books, and they will be collected into a graphic novel, so I'm just going to kind of count them as a graphic novel. And that series of comic books was Superman Unchained, and that was a 9-issue comic book series written by Scott Snyder and illustrated by Jim Lee. And I talked about that a little bit in my most recent haul, so I'm not going to go into it in great detail, but Scott Snyder's a phenomenal author, comic book writer, and Jim Lee is an outstanding illustrator. So I highly recommend Superman Unchained. I give it 4 stars. I think part of why it didn't go quite as high for me is I think that there was some emotions as a result of it being kind of delayed in coming out, and so I was a little disappointed with that. So I finished that on November 6th as well. November 7th, I finished The Twistrose Key, so this took me 1 day to read. I cannot tell you how to pronounce this author's name. It's like Tone Almshell. That's awful. Norwegian author, and this was the book of the month for the Little Book Club, which is Little Book Owl's book club. So Catriona was choosing a book that was written in Norway. And this was really great. This one I gave 5 stars. I really loved it. It's a middle grade book, and it's kind of like feels like a cross between Narnia and something else. I don't even know, but really great story, super interesting, and I hope that they do more. I'd be really interested in reading more from this series. So 5 stars. Then I began Holly Black's Modern Fairy Tales. These were really great books. I read all 3 of them right in a row. By the way, I feel almost as I'm doing this video like it's super repetitive because I really tend to stick to my TBRs. Like when I set my TBR, it's like a plan for the month of what I'm going to get done. And I don't deviate from that a whole lot. So I'm mentioning these, and a lot of these are exactly the same books I said I was going to read in my TBR. So it feels like I'm duplicating myself. I will say that for this upcoming month, that's a little bit different for December. I may deviate from it more than I planned, but we'll see. And also I'm going to start going into less detail on my TBR and more detail in my wrap-ups so that you can kind of get how I felt about it. But for the Modern Fairy Tale series by Holly Black, the first book is Tithe. And Tithe, I rated 3 stars. And I'm just going to tell you what I rated all 3 of them in a row, and then I'll talk about them together. Tithe, I rated 3 stars. Valiant, I rated 4 stars. And the third one, Ironside, I rated 4 stars. So I'm probably going to go in depth on these in a series wrap-up video that I plan on doing along with the Infernal Devices books. But I did like them quite a bit. I will say, part of the reason I wanted to read them is because I know that Cassandra Clare uses those fairies in her Shadowhunters books. And so I was interested in learning more about the fairies. And what I like about Cassandra Clare's books is that I feel like, even though there's some morally ambiguous characters, there are some morally redemptive characters as well. Some characters that you just feel like, this is a good person. They may be kind of torn, they may be making some bad decisions, they may be struggling with fears or concerns or whatever, but they're a good person. It was very difficult for me to feel that way about any of the characters in the Modern Fairy Tale books. I felt like most of the characters were extremely flawed, and that caused me to struggle with how much I liked the characters. Because I like to have a character that's, struggling, but ultimately is good. And I didn't feel that as much with Holly Black's books. So I think they would have probably been rated higher otherwise. Now, after that, I wanted something short and easy, so I read Friends with Boys, and I actually read that like one morning in an hour before I got picked up by a friend for work. Great, great graphic novel. This deals with the feeling of loss and change in someone's life, and just really, really enjoyed reading this. Highly recommend it. Super easy read, super worth it. Gave it 4 stars. Then after that, I jumped into the Infernal Devices series. I had just finished last month the Mortal Instruments series, so I wanted to keep going with the Shadowhunters world, and I can't tell you how much I loved this next series. In fact, I gave all 3 of these books 5 stars, so I'm just going to tell you I read Clockwork Angel, I read Clockwork Prince, and I read Clockwork Princess. And yes, I know they don't match, and it hurts inside, but nothing I can do right now. But all 3 of them 5 stars. I liked them more than the Mortal Instruments series, and I really liked the Mortal Instruments series, but these 3 books were just so, so good. And having read the Mortal Instruments books, I liked them even more. I love reading series of books, and so it was really exciting to have so many books that connect to one another, with the 6 Mortal Instruments books and the 3 Infernal Devices books and the 3 Modern Fairy Tale books, plus the Shadowhunters Codex and now the Bane Chronicles, and with 3 more series planned in the Shadowhunters books by Cassandra Clare. I'm really excited about that. I love being deep into a literary world. I love it. I would love to read more series like that. So after that, I went for a classic, and I had never read this either, and so this is Animal Farm by George Orwell. I had never read this. I feel a little ashamed to say that, but this one I gave 4 stars. I finished it on November 21st. Really loved it. Read it in a day. It was really good, and I could definitely see, more than most other books I've read, I could see that sort of allegorical, I couldn't think of the word for a second there, that allegorical nature of this book and how you could connect it to the real world and the government and things that went on and things that even in some degree still go on. And so just really enjoyed that as well. Then after that, I was super excited. I was not planning on getting this, but I didn't know it was coming out so soon. I got Teen Titans Earth 1, and I really love the Earth 1 graphic novels from DC Comics. So I had read Superman Volume 1 Earth 1 and Superman Earth 1 Volume 2 and Batman Earth 1 Volume 1, and I plan on getting Superman Earth 1 Volume 3 and Batman Earth 1 Volume 2 and Wonder Woman Earth 1 Volume 1 when that comes out. So I was excited to read Teen Titans Earth 1. To me, this was not quite as good as I hoped it would be. I gave it 4 stars. I probably should have given it 3 stars, but I gave it 4 stars because I believe that it's a lot of sort of like world building that'll be necessary for Volume 2. Which is weird to say world building with a comic book that's been around since the 60s or 70s, but these Earth 1 graphic novels kind of start over. So it's like a new, fresh take. So I had finished that on November 25th, and then I jumped into, or on November 22nd, and then I jumped into Wildwood Imperium. Now, this is the third book in the Wildwood trilogy by Colin Malloy and illustrated by Carson Ellis. And I had read the first two a long time ago, so it was kind of harder to get into this one because it had been so long. But this was such an interesting take, and such an interesting conclusion. And Colin Malloy is a genius in my eyes. I say that because I love the Decemberists, but this just kind of shows me that as well. So highly recommend the Wildwood trilogy. They take a little bit of effort, but they're beautiful, well-written, interesting books. Okay, so two things to mention is I am reading, or two things that I read, and I'm going to mention them. I am a part of the Very Dickens Christmas book club. I don't know the name of it off the top of my head. I'll put a link in the doobly-doo below, but it's a book club that Novels and Nonsense started here for the sort of holiday season, and it's basically 5 weeks of reading one short story by Charles Dickens each week. And so the first week was a 16-page short story, and it was The Goblin Who Stole a Sexton. I think that's the name of it. I'm sorry if I'm off on that a little bit, but that one was great. 16 pages, super quick, easy read, really interesting, really well written. I'd give it 5 out of 5 stars. And then the other one that I read was The Haunted Man, which was like 93 or 96 pages or something like that. And it's that's not the full name of it, but another Charles Dickens short story. That one was super hard to read, and I was really pleased because I'm rusty on my classics and I'm kind of brushing up on them as we go. But I was super pleased to see that people who are reading more Charles Dickens than me, like Samantha from Novels and Nonsense, they kind of also struggled with it a little bit. It ultimately had a really great message, but it was a tough read. So the next three, there's 3 more, and they're the more well-known ones, which are like The Chimes and The Cricket on the Hearth and A Christmas Carol, and I'm excited to read those. I've never read any of them but A Christmas Carol before, but I think that they'll be really good. So, yeah, so I finished that on November 26th. Now, I am not, the last thing I read in November, I'm not quite done with. I'm probably going to finish it tonight, and that is The Silkworm by Robert Galbraith. I started this in November, and I'm going to finish it here tonight on December 1st. But holy cow, so good. I mean, I love J.K. Rowling. The Casual Vacancy was a tough read, but The Cuckoo's Calling was amazing, and The Silkworm is just, like, I'm going to get all of these Cormoran Strike books as they come out because they're so good. So, love this. Probably going to give this 5 out of 5 stars. And that is what I read in November, and gosh, it was a lot. And I got to say, I'm still pushing myself. On the 2014 Reading Challenge, I set a goal of 100 books. And just to give you an update, I am currently at 91 books. The Silkworm will be 92. So I've got about 8 or 9 books to read in December, which is not a whole lot considering I've been reading 13 or more consistently for the last several months. But my in-laws are coming in town in the end of December, and I'll want to spend time with them, so I probably won't read as much when they're here. So I've got to book it here for this next few weeks if I'm going to meet my goal for the month of December. And I hope I do. And as far as my challenge in the school where I'm competing against a neighboring junior high, I am currently at about 16,000 pages since the school year started in August. And I'm pretty proud of that. The most I've ever read was like 22,000 pages or something like that for the year. And I've had a good semester like this before where I read 16,000 pages in a semester, but that was the year that I adopted my son, and I adopted him in February, and the following half of the year I only read like 2,000 pages, like nowhere near as much. So I have a good chance of beating my best. Now there's another teacher at my school that last year read like 40,000 pages. Probably not going to catch up to that, but I'm going to do my best. Anyway, I hope that you had a good reading month, and I hope that you got some good stuff planned for December, and let me know down below what you're planning on doing. Okay? Thanks. Till the next video, see you same lit time, same lit channel.